What's going on, guys? This is Serious the Warlock here, and I am finally bringing you my Affliction PvP guide for Warlords of Draenor. I'm sorry this took so long to get out. I wanted to make sure that I had my shit together and I knew what I was doing as an Affliction Warlock before I put out a guide telling other people what they should be doing. I didn't want to copy any other Warlocks, and there's a lot of discussion going out there about haste versus mastery and which stack you should be stacking. And I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing for myself before I told other people what I was doing, so that's why it took a while. I'm going to try to keep this video short, but I have a lot of things to go over. I'm going to go over the basics of Affliction. I'm going to go into a little bit deeper strategy as like what's going through my mind right now when I'm playing. But I'm also going to go into stats, which ones are the best, like I said, haste versus mastery. I'm going to talk about gear suggestions, the gear that I'm going to be personally picking from my own Warlock. I'll go over talents, glyphs, enchants, and then I'll also go over some of my macros, and I'll include those macros down in the description of the video as well. Alright, so I'm just going to jump right into this with the basics. As an Affliction Warlock, you have 3 dots: Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction. Agony is an instant cast dot, and it can stack up to 10 times on each target. It will be most of your damage as an Affliction Warlock as long as you're keeping it in 10 stacks. You want to keep it on 10 stacks on as many targets as possible, and you want to refresh it before it falls off and goes back to 1 stack. Corruption, that's another instant cast dot. It just does damage, but you can also glyph it with the Glyph of Siphon Life, and that'll give you a little heal every single time it ticks. So the more corruptions that you have out there ticking on people, the more passive healing you'll get in return. Now, corruption ticks also have a chance to proc soul shards, but it only applies to the very last corruption that you've applied. And our last dot is Unstable Affliction. It's a cast time spell. It does about 10% more damage than corruption, but it also acts as a protector for the rest of your dots from being dispelled. So upon being dispelled, the dispeller will take some damage, it's very minimal, and then they get silenced for 4 seconds. So the damage that they take from the dispel really doesn't hurt the healers that much, but they also can't keep dispelling your dots for too long if they want to do anything else, like heal. Now our filler spell is Drain Soul. This is what you cast when your dots are applied, when Haunt's applied, when you've done anything that you want to do to like increase the damage of your dots, which I'll get to in a second. And it's just the filler. And it's also really great for getting Agony stacks up to 10 quicker. Like the moment you apply Agony, it's at 1 stack. You can cast probably about 1.5 Drain Soul channels, and it'll get Agony to 10 much faster than it would on its own. Okay, so dot modifiers. There are several abilities that you can do to increase the damage of your dots that are going out there. The first one is Haunt. Haunt will increase the dot damage to a single target by 30%. Now you can also Soulburn Haunt if you talent it, which every Warlock should, and that gives you a buff on yourself that increases your overall dot damage by an additional 20% to all targets. It's dot damage everywhere, additional 20%. The Warlock PvP 4-set bonus gives you 1300 versatility, which comes out to about 10% damage increase and about a 5% damage reduction to yourself. And along with Haunt and Soulburn Haunt, which stack together, and your teleport, you also have your PvP damage trinket if you have an on-use trinket, which I do on my human Warlock. And then you also have Dark Soul that you can do as well that will increase your haste by an additional 30%, so that's also really nice. Alright, so in RBGs, you want to get your dots out on everything. That's the priority. Players, pets, anything that you can dot. If you're being out damaged by another Warlock in a rated battleground, I promise if you look in recount, they got more dots out there than you did. You want to try to keep Soulburn Haunt up 100%. It's a 30-second duration, so every 30 seconds you waste 2 soul shards on Soulburn Haunt to keep that up 100%. And when you think you have everything dotted, or just as many things as you can possibly keep dotted right now, just a lot of stuff, then feel free to teleport offensively instead of defensively to increase your damage by 10%. And you can pop Dark Soul on your damage trinket at that time too. Remember that in this expansion, damage modifiers for Affliction Warlock and all dot classes were reworked. You no longer pop Dark Soul on your damage trinket and then start casting dots. Now you cast all your dots, and once you're satisfied with the dots that you have out there, then you pop your damage cooldowns like Dark Soul, Damage Trinket, Teleport, all that kind of stuff. And your dots will update their damage dynamically. You want to do your absolute best to refresh Agony on everyone to keep it at 10 stacks. It's only your highest dot tick when it's at 10 stacks. And so you want to tab target Agony and Corruption if you're being focused. If you feel like you're being targeted by interrupts and silences, go ahead and just tab target Agony and Corruption since they're both instant cast, and then go back and cast some Unstable Afflictions when you feel more comfortable that you can get them out there. Your single target kill rotation, like if you're trying to land a kill on an enemy flag carrier, it kind of goes like this. The 30% dot increase from Haunt on your target stacks with the 20% dot increase buff on yourself when you Soulburn Haunt. So you combine the two, so you just Soulburn Haunt your target, and that's a lot of extra single target damage. You get all 3 dots on your target, you Soulburn Haunt, then you pop your modifiers like Dark Soul, your Damage Trinket, and then even Teleport for the extra 10% damage, and then you just start channeling Drain Soul. So again, keep all 3 dots up, Soulburn Haunt, and then just pop Dark Soul, your Damage Trinket, Teleport, and then start channeling Drain Soul, and try to keep Haunt up with the 3 dots 100% while you're channeling that Drain Soul. Alright, so as far as stats go, on your screen, this is what I've decided to go with for my Warlock. It took a lot of thought, and I'm fairly confident that this is what I'm going to stick with, and or else I wouldn't be making this video. I went with Haste over Mastery, over Versatility, over Crit, over Multi-Strike. By the time you get to Crit and Multi-Strike, I mean, you don't want them at all. I'm focusing on as much Haste as I possibly can get, and after Haste, then I try to get Mastery. That's pretty much it. Haste over Mastery. Every piece of your gear should have Haste, and if it can't have Haste, then it should have Mastery. Now, these stats are debatable. There are a lot of Warlocks out there that are running Mastery over Haste. I decided to go with Haste over Mastery. A lot of other Warlocks have done this too. I see it split almost 50-50 right now, but the benefits of Haste. A reduced global cooldown, which is the time between casting spells, which means you're going to cast faster. All your dots are going to tick faster, which means Corruption is going to tick faster, which equals more self-healing from the Siphon Life Glyph. So it's quicker heals coming in, and as you're getting Corruption out there on multiple targets, especially in RBG, it equals a lot of self-healing. It also increases the regeneration rate of soul shards, because those Corruption ticks are coming in faster, so that equals more haunts, and a higher chance of having shards available for Soulburn Haunt when you need it. Now, when you're digging for information out there, on paper, Mastery is going to look like the better stat for just making your dots tick harder. It's probably going to be the PvE stat. But Haste, especially in PvP, provides a lot more utility for all the reasons I just named. And it also scales with Dark Soul, which increases your haste by 30% for 20 seconds. And it also stacks with the passive Eradication, which increases your haste by 5% from all sources. It's also going to mean faster cast times, too. I don't know if I've just mentioned that, but with Unstable Affliction, getting them out there, since we're very cast reliant now. And with Fears, because we're down CC and Fears are... you know, if you go against 2 Warlocks duel each other and one's Haste and one's Mastery, the one's going to have a way faster Fear cast time. So it can go either way. One Warlock's going to be hitting a little harder, the other one's going to be getting the cast off quicker and probably going to get more Soul Shard procs. So it can go either way, but I've decided to go with the Haste over Mastery. Alright, so for my personal gear suggestions, what I'm going to be picking up for gear for myself, Blizzard's given us at least 2 or 3 different options for every single gear slot, so it gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to gear. You need the 4-piece set bonus from PvP gear, but you only need 4, and there's 5 different options. So that means one of those tier pieces can be swapped out, like the helm or the chest, for a non-tier, non-set bonus type item. So first you want to decide what stat you're going to be stacking, and again I choose Haste over Mastery. So I want to make sure that as many items have haste on it as possible. And if it's not possible to have haste, then the item should have mastery. I'm excluding trinkets here. I'm not talking about trinkets. But if any gear item has neither of those two stats, haste or mastery, then it's kind of a waste of a gear slot. Alright, so here's the items I went through, and I'll just scroll through each one and talk about the stats that are on each piece. So for the helm, I decided to go with the off piece here. It has haste and versatility. For the neck, I went with haste and crit. For the shoulders, I went with mastery and crit. It's a tier piece. For the back or cape, I went with haste mastery. For the chest, I went haste and crit. It's the tier piece. For the wrist, I went mastery and crit. For the gloves, I went haste and mastery. It's the tier item. For the waist or belt, I have haste and multi-strike. For the legs, that's also the tier item. I went mastery and multi-strike. For the feet, I went haste and mastery. And then for ring 1, I went haste multi-strike. And ring 2 should be haste and crit. I just got lucky or unlucky with the ring that I'm not going to use, whichever way you want to say it. And then trinket, one's intel with versatility on use, and the other one's versatility with intellect proc. You want to make sure you get those trinkets, because they're... Although I see some warlocks running with the PvE trinkets, the PvP ones will give you 10% less damage taken. And then the staff has a little bit better stats. The staff has a little bit better stats than the main hand offhand, but more importantly, it has haste, which is way more haste than the other ones have. Alright, so for the talents, I'll go over each one of these here and explain my reasoning for why. Tier 1, you went Dark Regeneration. It's going to be that way in Arena and in Rated Battlegrounds. Anywhere where you have a competent healer that's going to throw heals on you when you're in trouble, it works really well. There are times where Harvest Life is acceptable, but it's more like World PvP and duels, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Tier 2, Shadow Fury. Most of the time, I'd say I'd pick Shadow Fury. AoE, it's got a short cooldown, stun. But on some maps, like Silver Shard Mines, where teams are really grouped up in small clusters, howling people out of the cart can be really helpful. So you kind of want to look at what's going to diminish the DR, diminishing returns, with the rest of your teammates. If your team is filled with rogues and warriors and people that stun, then you probably want to stay away from Shadow Fury. Or if your team is really heavy on druids, because Howl and Fears will DR with Cyclones, you probably want to stay away from Howl of Terror if your team's druid heavy. The tier 3 and tier 5 talent, they kind of go along with each other. In Rated Battlegrounds, your pet's not going to live, so I always choose Dark Bargain with Sacrifice. The Dark Bargain will save your ass a lot, and you want to sacrifice your pet, that way you always have your spell lock available. If you're doing arenas, it is, and you're not going against a dot cleave or a melee heavy cleave, then it is acceptable to take Soul Link and Supremacy. Actually, your healer would probably prefer it. And you just want to make sure you keep your pet up. It'll give you a little bit more survivability, and you don't have to worry about your pet dying if it's not melee or dot cleave. Other than that, you want to take Sacrifice against the dots and the melee classes. Unbound Will, I almost always go Unbound Will. It's a second PvP trinket on a 2-minute cooldown. I always take Archimonde's Darkness. It's way better than Killjading's Cunning or Manaral's Fury. Killjading's Cunning is pretty crap, and Manaral's Fury is even crappier. It's just AoE damage, so Dark Soul having 2 charges is really nice. And if you're an Affliction Warlock, you probably always want to take Soulburn Haunt. I can't think of a time you're going to take Cataclysm or Demonic Servitude unless you're just trying to goof around. It's the clear option that it'll especially in Rated Battlegrounds, it permanently increases the damage of all your dots by 20%, because you can keep it up you only have to Soulburn Haunt every 30 seconds, so you permanently have a 20% dot damage increase. For glyphs, I always take Siphon Life, which makes your corruption ticks heal you for a little bit. The more corruptions you have out there, the more little heals you'll get. I also take Unstable Affliction, which reduces the cast time of Unstable Affliction by 25%. And I also take Eternal Resolve, which removes Unending Resolve, but gives you a passive 10% damage reduction. Now, back to something I hinted at before. If you're doing solo PvP, like world PvP or dueling, then it's also acceptable to take the Harvest Life talent over Dark Regeneration, which deals 50% more damage from Drain Life and increases the healing by 100%, and taking the Glyph of Drain Life, which increases the Drain Life by an additional 100%. And you probably want to swap it out with Unstable Affliction, Glyph, or Eternal Resolve, because the healing from Siphon Life and the healing from... You pretty much want as much healing as possible when you're in solo PvP environment, like dueling or world PvP. So I'd replace one of those two, probably the Eternal Resolve one, because the 10% damage reduction may not be as important as using Unending Resolve on someone's burst. So it's up to you guys. For enchants, the only enchants left in the game are your neck, your cape, your 2 rings, and your weapon. So you want to make sure that you take the enchant for the stat that you decided to stack. So like I said before, I chose haste over mastery, so that's what I'll be enchanting. The weapon enchant that I chose is Mark of Warsong, which increases your haste by 1,000 when it procs, but then it drops down like 10% every 2 seconds until it fades away. The other enchants for your other items that you have are either called the Breath of something like haste or mastery, or the Gift of something like haste or mastery. And the breath enchants are the weaker ones, and the gifts are the stronger ones. The neck and rings just increase the stat that you chose, so I just went with haste. But the better cape enchant also increases your run speed by an additional 10%. So it's really important. It was one of the first PvP items I bought was my cape. That way I could pay for the better enchant. That way I don't have to do it once. That 10% run speed is really important. And finally, macros. I'm just going to show them on the screen. I'll go over them briefly, and then I'll include them down in the description of the video. But I just want to go over each one because it might make you guys think. You might be able to come up with your own helpful macros. And these are things I just made for myself. They're the main ones I think I'm using right now, and they just come in helpful. So the first one is for Soulburn Haunt. So I can just hit the button and it'll haunt, or I can use Alt as my modifier, and when I hit the button, it'll Soulburn Haunt. The second one is for me just to cast Fear at my focus target. The next one is really important in Arena. If you're playing against certain comps that have a Hunter or something else that's going to consistently try to CC your healer, then it's best to run with an Imp and sacrifice it, which becomes Singe Magic, so you can dispel your healer. And then it's also helpful just to make a macro for it, so you don't have to target your healer. As soon as he calls out, I'm getting trapped or I need to dispel, you can just hit that one button, it'll instantly do it. So the macro that I have, if I just press the button, it was going to dispel my healer, but if I modified it with the control button and hit it, then it was going to dispel my arena partner, the other DPS on my team, not the healer. The next one is my focus spell lock button. There may be an easier way to do this maybe, but I just wanted to show you guys an example of how you can like modify with like different pets that you have, a same macro but with different pets. So if I don't have a pet out and I hit the button, it's going to focus my... I'm just going to spell lock. If I don't have a pet out, it's probably because I sacrificed my Felhunter. So it's going to spell lock my focus target when I have my Felhunter sacked. But if I have the Observer out, it's going to Optical Blast, and if I have the Felhunter out, it's going to Spell Lock. So it does everything in one button. The next one is if I'm in trouble and I need crazy heals really fast. It's for the Dark Regeneration Healthstone, and if I happen to have an Imp out for some reason, it'll also Cauterize Master, which also gives me another like 8% healing. The next one is Soulburn Soul Swap, which I really don't use that much anymore, especially not like last season. That was like one of the main buttons I pressed, but it's still helpful to have Soul Swap just in case you need it, or Soulburn Soul Swap if you're in a real predicament and you just need to get your dots applied. It'll use 2 Soul Shards, one for the Soulburn and one for the Soul Swap. The next one is to instant summon a Felhunter. But this macro, it works kind of strange because if I have Observer as my pet, it'll also work with the Observer. So I can just press this button, it'll instantly summon my Felhunter or Observer. And then if I if I'm using the observer, the better pets, and I want to summon the Voidlord, I can use alt and it'll instant summon the Voidlord instead. Like if I'm fighting with the observer and they keep killing my pet over and over again, I can instant summon a Voidlord and it'll live a little bit better. The next 3 macros are my pet macros, how I manage my pet. Pet passive and pet follow, that's 1 macro, and I have it bound to scroll wheel down, so my pet will turn passive and follow me. Pet attack is scroll wheel up on my mouse, and pet move 2 is, I think I have it like alt scroll wheel click down, and it brings up a little cursor, and I can move my pet where I need to, and then if I need to bring them back, I can just pet follow again. And the very last macro is for Dark Soul. It's like your damage. It's Dark Soul and your PvP damage trinket. Those are the main ones that I'm using right now. I looked through my macros. A lot of them are dated or not being used, like mouse over Fel Flame, and a lot of I need to do a lot of cleanup. But these are the main ones that I'm using right now. All right, well that's all I have. Just over 20 minutes, so I guess that's not too bad for a guide video. Thumbs up the video if you really liked it. I'm sorry I haven't been coming out with a lot of videos. Like I said, I want to make sure I had my shit together before I came out with this guide. I feel pretty confident about everything that I've said, so it should be good information for you guys. If you like it, thumbs up the video. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. I always pay attention to the comments, and I'll talk to you guys again really soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.